financial reporting of corporates misleading its stakeholders, and there are so many fraudulent financial reporting. It affects all the stakeholders of the business, who include board of directors, financial analysts, managers, government agencies, and investors and others. And the financial statements include balance sheet, income statement, cash flow statement, funds statement of changes in equity. And these are the accounting principles which are supposed to be followed by the accountants while preparing the statements. And the objectives of the study is to identify the areas where the accounting principles are violated or misused, to identify the companies that have violated the accounting principles and the consequences of such violation, and to suggest some preventions to prevent the fraudulent financial reporting. And the methodology is the data required is collected through secondary data sources, and the information is gathered from various websites. And the fraudulent reporting types can be categorized into 4 basic categories: fraudulent financial reporting, misappropriation of assets, revenue and assets obtained by fraud, expenditures and liabilities for an improper purpose. And fraudulent financial reporting can be further classified under these following heads, and some of the techniques, they are permissible by GAAP. They are called as a gray zone, and there are some techniques which are not permissible by GAAP, and they have been given there. And the second thing is misappropriation of assets can be is another method of fraudulent management. And the next one is under the misappropriation of assets, we have misappropriation of cash and misappropriation of inventory. Through these ways, the assets can be misappropriated. And the third way is misappropriation by revenue and assets obtained by fraud is another method. And the fourth one is expenditure and liabilities for an improper use, using the expenditures and liabilities for improper use. I have some examples over here which say how they have used wrongly the accounting concepts and conventions. And the cost of the financial fraud, in any organization, at least 3 to 6% of the financial transactions turn to be fraudulent, and in some cases it may be more than 10%. In any typical organization loses 5% of the revenues for its fraud, and 85% of the frauds occur due to asset misappropriation, but losses from such fraud are very minimal. In contrary, only 9% of the cases are involved in financial statement fraud, but they account for heavy and unbearable losses.
Please conclude.
And the suggestions are, the companies have to establish a good fraud management mechanism, and the employees of the organization should not be kept in the post for the same for a longer period of time, and a good internal audit mechanism have to be maintained, and operational audits to be effective, and the external auditors should try to obtain the sufficient and appropriate audit evidence, and the audit unit should be established separately and proper vigilance and guidance should be provided, and the staff, management and executive officers of the organization have to work hard for the common good. Thank you.
Thank you. We are short of time, therefore, please cooperate with us.
Good afternoon to one and all. As we have heard that when we talk about fraud, we come across 3 S's. As my paper relates around one of the S, that is Sahara Group of companies. The objective of my paper is to find out illegal issues of shares and to study the violation of SEBI guidelines. The findings or the suggestions to improve the effectiveness of the corporate governance in India is to expand the jurisdiction of SEBI to control unlisted companies and their activities. It is the responsibility of the government and its various nodal agencies to furnish every area of their business, to make necessary clarity, transparency in provisions dealing with regarding business towards general objectives of the nation, to establish necessary banking institutions in the rural parts of India and make awareness among the people about various banking products. Primitive policies should put in place to keep away corporate houses from political interventions. All the informal collective investment schemes must be brought under the jurisdiction of centralized enforcement authority. With regard to my conclusion, it is, SEBI should be bestowed with more legal powers. The continuous market and technological developments provide an opportunity to commit fraud, though they are tools to technical to prevent and detect, but still frauds are committed at all levels of management at different degrees and different volumes. The large of the top level management and the smaller lower level management are the important ones. These should be kept away from political connectivity. In other words, ethics and value in our life are what we have to practice. If it is practiced daily, we can prevent fraud in our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Upadhyay Sanjay from St. Joseph Degree and PG College. The topic is Accounting Fraud in Corporate, case study on Satyam Computers Limited.
Good afternoon, one and all. Doing the right thing doesn't automatically bring success, but compromising ethics always leads to failure. Going into the topic, fraud is a wide range of illicit practices and illegal acts involving intentional deception or misinterpretation. Objectives of my study are to examine in depth and analyze India's Enron, that is Satyam Computers creative accounting scandal, the influence of Satyam on Indian market and factors affecting it. Satyam is a corporate scandal that worked in India in 2009, where Chairman Ramalinga Raju confessed that the company's accounts has been falsified. By overstating company's revenues and reports, making unethical decisions let the company fall into the trap. The factors affecting to the fraud are weak directors, a lack of transparency over the company, greed, ambitious corporate growth, deceptive reporting practices are some of the factors affecting the fraud. And also the auditors had been paid twice and thus the auditing the company for nearly 9 years and did not uncover the fraud. It had a great influence on the Indian market. The company was expected to discontinue some of its business services, and the country's GDP fell by 0.4%, and obviously there were huge loss to investors side. It caused several damage to India's incorporation reputation. Here some of the lessons we can learn from the Satyam case are fraud is something which doesn't just look bad on the company, but it looks bad on whole industry and country. So if the even the accounts are should be balanced, even the accounts may be small or big, investigation should be done. The corporate governments needs to be stronger. The public companies needs to be careful while selecting the executives and top level managers. I would conclude like always ethical code of conduct is essential, transparency over the company and in financial reporting, effective internal and external auditing system and regulatory checks. When these steps or actions are followed, there will be no change in the fraud. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is N. Vittal. Please occupy the seats in the first row. Vittal, only the objectives and findings, please.
Yes, madam. The main objectives of fraud risk management are prevention, detection, deterrence, and response. And the effects of frauds are every organization is losing as much as 7% of their annual turnover. Corruption is estimated to cost the global economy of about 41.5 trillion each year. The fraud risks can be mitigated by establishment of strong internal control culture. Internal controls should be in place and ensure legal and regulatory compliance, segregation of duties and personnel to forestall conflicts of interest. Risk mitigation tools should be viewed as complementary and not as replacement for internal operational risk control. Periodical external audits should be done. Credit rating by ICRA and CRISIL must be on a regular basis. In the developing nations, including India, fraud risk management occupies a gigantic role, as there is a wide scope for corporate frauds and fraudulent financial practices in view of the phenomenal growth taking place in the corporate sector due to the vibrant economic development. As the fraud risk management is a very systematic in advanced nations due to the stringent norms adopted by states, the developing nations must take adequate precautions to protect the interests of shareholders, creditors, financial institutions, and other important stakeholders. There must be transparency in corporate sector, and frauds under the garb of corporate veil must be contained. Thank you.
Thank you. Sai Geeta and Ashok, Mandeep and Srinivas Yadav. It is a joint paper. The topic is only findings and conclusions, objectives, findings, please. The topic is financial frauds, causes, consequences, and prevention. A case study of Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities. Yes, please start.
My topic is financial fraud cases, consequences, and prevention. A case study of Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities. Bernie Madoff was born on April 29, 1938, to Ralph and Shelva Madoff, registered a brokerage firm called Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities in year 1959. Bernie started trading over the counter by meeting the needs of buyers and sellers over the phone. Bernie understood that speed and efficiency was his competitive advantages and computerized his entire option in 1917. In 1971, NASCAR was formed and Bernie was one among the first five broken to join NASCAR. These hedge funds are called feeder hedge funds.
Your
Feeder
objectives and findings, please. You tell the objectives of your study, then what are the main findings, okay?
How was the fraud done? Bernard Madoff was owned the three financial companies, brokerage firm and trading firm and investment advisor. The license, but did not have the license from investment advisory firm. He had a long track record of successful investing. He was a criticizing person and did not bash about his financial success. He held the position as a non-executive chairman of NASDAQ. Red flag that was evident. The red flags was case of Bernard L. Madoff invest the securities on non-financial.
Your
nature
conclusion, please. Conclusion. Last వచ్చేసేయండి.
Corporate governance failure, regulated of self-regulated, related party transaction, revenue recognition, use combination of the top management, post-fraud regulatory changes as a result of collapse Bernard L. Madoff invest security due to financial frauds. Sarbanes-Oxley Act (SOX) was introduced in 2002 in US to prevent frauds and assures effective implementation of corporate governance in India. SEBI, based on the recommendations.
Over? Yeah. Thank you very much.